Welcome welcome to October, the Management Forum. We're delighted you're here. Um, be sure to use the Q&A to ask any questions. We'll answer as many as we can today. Those we can't answer, we'll promise to get information back to you as soon as we possibly can. So we have a few things today. One thing has been taken off the agenda, and that is the employee survey results. That will be moved to the November Management Forum. So we won't be doing that today. But we will be talking about COVID, about our safety, and we'll be talking about capital projects. So to start us off, Susan.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to October Management Forum. It's really feeling like fall out there, and it was a beautiful weekend. I hope you all got a chance to rest, relax, enjoy the Giants winning last night. For those of you who are baseball fans, I know there are a few of you out there. Just a couple things I wanted to mention before I reintroduce Dr. Lisa Winston. One is, I know it's been a very tumultuous time in terms of staffing. We don't have Luana Kim here with us today, but I did want to mention for those of you who aren't aware that we had a rapid onboarding event a couple of weekends ago that went really well. We had about 50 nurses who were onboarded, 39 of whom are going to start at ZSFG this coming Monday, which is really terrific news. They will join our current staff, some registry that we've been able to bring in gradually. And so we're getting back to staffing that is a little bit better than it's been over the past few months. So I want to thank you all for your patience with that. Lisa, there's been a lot going on with boosters and vaccination and all that news, and I know Lisa will be sharing the latest with us, which is wonderful. So just want to express gratitude to you all, and with that, we'll introduce Dr. Lisa Winston, our hospital epidemiologist. Take it away, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. Hi, good morning, everyone. And I will also say happy October. Many of you have probably heard that even the careful Dr. Fauci is saying that we can think about enjoying trick-or-treating this year. So for those who have kids and are planning to be outside for Halloween, that's feeling like a win to get back to some things that we all enjoy that feel more normal. So just in terms of where we are, big picture for COVID, I would say, as I was reflecting on it, that we are both at a time of hope and at a time of some uncertainty. Not that we are strangers to uncertainty. So, the good news is that in much of the US and certainly in California and the Bay Area, cases are falling, even in the areas that have been very hard hit. Although, as you have likely seen, hospitalizations and deaths are lagging. And I just did want to point out as we talk about vaccinations, that both in the US and in the UK, one really difficult thing that's happening is that a number of the cases of people presenting with severe disease have been in pregnant people who have not yet been vaccinated, due to nervousness about the vaccine, potentially putting it off. And all of our professional organizations and the CDC are really emphasizing that pregnancy is an important indication for COVID vaccination, and that pregnancy is a risk factor for severe disease. So we can help get that word out, I think. In terms of where we are for vaccinations, I think many people are aware and will have seen the lines outside the cafeteria. because Pfizer boosters are in place. For many who completed the 2-dose series, including healthcare workers. And so we're encouraging boosters for people who are 65 and older, for those who are over 50 with chronic medical conditions, and then for younger adults who have chronic medical conditions, boosters are certainly an option, as they are for healthcare workers and for other frontline workers, including teachers and first responders. How the winter is going to look, I think, is still an area of some uncertainty. We in the infection control department were reflecting back on last year, 2020, when at this point we actually looked pretty good in terms of COVID, and unfortunately we were sort of just before our winter surge. That does not mean that things are going to be the same this year. We're certainly in a different place in terms of vaccines, and certainly we've done a fantastic job getting people on campus vaccinated. But we do know that Delta is more infectious, and that our vaccines, while they still protect against severe disease, are not probably as effective against preventing infection with Delta virus. So I think care and caution are still indicated. We'll be cautiously optimistic, but really carefully watching the signs. So in addition to the Pfizer boosters, I think many people are also aware that this Thursday and Friday are big days at the FDA. The FDA is meeting to discuss boosters for those who received Moderna and J&J. There's really particular interest regarding boosters after J&J, because that, of course, was only a single dose. And the protection from a single dose may not be as robust, does not appear to be as robust as it has been for the mRNA vaccines. So we're going to be watching that very closely. We understand it is also on the agenda for them to discuss the effectiveness of mixing different vaccine brands. So we will hear with interest what comes out of that. And then the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices has scheduled a meeting to follow soon after the FDA meeting. So we will bring you those updates as soon as we have them. I think the other thing that people are waiting for very eagerly is the October 26th FDA meeting to talk about emergency use authorization for Pfizer vaccine for ages 5 to 11. It is thought, although of course we don't know exactly what's going to happen, that vaccines may become available between Halloween and Thanksgiving for those who are ages 5 to 11. And in fact, some of the unmasking metrics for the Bay Area are tied to having that vaccine be available for those who are ages 5 to 11. So turning briefly away from vaccinations, I will just say that there are some exciting developments in therapeutics. So an application has now been submitted to the FDA for a drug called molnupiravir. So this is the first oral antiviral that's effective against COVID. Data were presented at ID Week and have also been released via press release. And while this drug may not be quite as effective as the monoclonal antibodies are in preventing severe disease in patients who have early COVID, it is substantially less expensive and more convenient than administering monoclonal antibodies. And so this may be an option that more people can potentially take advantage of. So we look forward to that with interest. There are other antivirals and other therapies that are being looked at, because we have had limited things to offer to people in the outpatient setting if they do get COVID. I will end with just saying a word about unmasking, and Susan may talk a little bit more about this. I'm sure many people have seen in the news that we are looking to be able to do a little less masking in some parts of our lives outside of the healthcare setting. So there has been a little bit of relaxation in some areas in San Francisco where there's a stable group of people, certain workplaces, areas where people may have a membership, where it can be documented that everyone is vaccinated. And our Department of Public Health and political leaders are looking at, whether those will get updated in the near future. I think that they probably will. But just want to mention that, in our healthcare environment, we do feel like this is a more high risk setting. We are trying to be very careful. And so we don't have any changes here on campus, and everyone is doing a wonderful job with wearing their masks and trying to do everything we can to prevent the spread here, and that is very much appreciated. So I will stop there, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Could I? I'm sorry.
I can add about the
Oh, yeah.
the things that Lisa mentioned. Thank you, Lisa, for prompting me on that. So last week there were a couple of news items that allowed for unmasking or anticipated allowing for unmasking. So I'll just mention those because they were a little bit confusing. So first was the agreement and the issuing the press conference among the 9 Bay Area health officers, including our own health officer, Dr. Phillip, that basically created criteria for when mask mandates could be lifted in the counties. And they're very extensive criteria, very thoughtful. And it had to do with getting into a transmission tier. So just like the state had tiers for severity of incidence of disease, the CDC does. I didn't realize this until I looked at it. But most of our counties are in the orange tier, and in order to unmask, you'd have to get to the yellow tier. In addition to that, meeting the yellow tier, the health officer would need to believe that hospitalizations were low and stable. And then in addition to that, 80% of the population would need to be fully vaccinated, or we would need to be 8 weeks past an emergency use authorization for 5 to 11-year-olds. So all those 3 criteria would need to be met in order for mask mandates to be lifted in the 9 counties. Nobody expects any of the counties to reach those criteria for another couple of months or so. So that was thing 1. This press release from the 9 Bay Area health officers. In addition to that, San Francisco issued its own relaxation of mask mandates starting on October 15th, which of course is this week. And that is that mask mandates would be lifted in select indoor settings where fully vaccinated people gather. So that includes offices, gyms, other places with fewer than 100 people. You would have to look at the health order to be certain about where those places are. That order would not apply to people who are unvaccinated, meaning that if you are unvaccinated, you'd still need to wear a mask. And it doesn't apply to every setting, just as Lisa mentioned. In hospitals and schools, for example, mask mandates will not be lifted for the foreseeable future. So that is a lot of information, and it does provide hope. And actually, it provides a date, October 15th in San Francisco, where mask mandates will be lifted in some settings. So thank you, Lisa, for that prompt, and I'm happy to answer any questions to the extent of my ability, should they come up.
Well, let's, for both of you, let's stay with the masking thing for a second. First, um, the, the masking mandates won't be lifted in our work setting for what, for the foreseeable future. Is that right?
That's what
Okay.
that's what Dr. Colfax said, for the foreseeable future.
Okay. Um, and and the San Francisco statement talked about stable populations. Could you talk about kind of what that means? Kind of it's not like a bar setting, right, where people come in and out, but what kinds of settings are we talking about for those?
Right. So the examples that I have are offices and gyms. There are more settings that are elaborated in the health order, which I don't have in front of me right now, and a lot more details. I know it also applies to places that have fewer than 100 people. So it wouldn't apply, for example, to, a Warriors game. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a question from a viewer. Um, so we have contractors and sub agencies that work at the hospital. For example, this question highlights funeral homes that need to come um, onto campus and into the um, and in actually into the clinical care buildings. Um, what are the circumstances under which those people are allowed to come into our facilities?
Do you want to take that, Lisa, or do you want me to?
Susan, I'll start, and then I think others. Then it would be wonderful if you can also provide context and details. So, Ayanna Johnson and her team have taken the lead in, providing very detailed guidance around this, which I think has been extremely helpful. So in general, when people need to come in, we are able to accommodate them, coming in if they have an appropriate reason to be here. But with very few exceptions, everyone who's coming on campus needs to demonstrate that they have been vaccinated. And of course, they will be wearing masks. So, and then we have separate guidelines for inpatient visitors that do allow for visitors to inpatients to come in, of course, wearing masks. If they're not vaccinated, they need to have demonstrated that they have a negative test within 3 days. But the negative testing doesn't apply to others who have appropriate reasons to be on campus. Those folks are going to need to demonstrate that they've been vaccinated. And of course, it continues to be important that people are not coming on campus, if they have symptoms. So I hope that's helpful. The very limited exceptions for who can come in are certain messengers who need to deliver to the blood bank in a really, critical situation that they cannot be met outside and still do their business. But it's a pretty small number. Susan, do I have that right? Anything to add?
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, again, I really appreciate Ayanna Johnson and her team for laying this out in writing. So Brent, maybe we want to send Ayanna's guidance out to the group, just so everybody has those details.
I will do that. Okay. And one more question before we move on to capital projects, and that is, Lisa, you mentioned this oral antiviral. Could you talk about kind of who would get that drug and like how it would be administered? Is it over a course of a period of time? Just a little bit more detail about that. That'd be great.
For sure, I would be delighted to talk more about it. So it's very exciting because it's the first one, but it's not yet approved. So we will see if it gets authorization, and then of course, as with all new things, and my guess is it will get, well, it may get emergency use authorization if it does get authorized. So then we have to see how it's distributed and how much is available. There aren't guidelines as yet on who might get it, but it is for people who have been diagnosed with COVID. It's not being proposed as a preventative drug at this point, so it would be prescribed for people hopefully early in disease. And my guess is that the targeted group would be people who are more at risk for severe disease, rather than, for example, if you're young and healthy and you have a breakthrough case and you're minimally symptomatic, those would probably not be the people who would initially be targeted. Not because it's thought that there are harms to the drug, but the benefit would be lower.
Mhm.
So the drug is given over a 5-day course. It's given twice a day, and I believe it's 4 pills twice a day, so 8 pills a day, so 40 pills altogether. So it's kind of a lot of pills, but it's very well tolerated. And it remains to be seen exactly how it will be dispensed. Of course, it would be really nice if we could just prescribe it and people could pick it up at a pharmacy, the way they do with other medications. But that is often not the case initially, particularly if supplies are limited. But we're excited and we're very interested to see how that plays out.
Okay, and do you have any sense of timing or no?
Uh, the FDA is going to consider it quite soon, so I think we may hear more actually pretty soon. But no, I don't. I mean, I no real sense as to the exact timing.
Okay, thank you. So let's shift gears and talk about the construction and the other projects happening on campus. And Terry might be persuaded to give us a play-by-play of what he's seeing out the window. And I know that we have Ken also who can shed light on that. Terry, you want to go ahead and start talking about capital projects?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everybody. Let me bring up my presentation here. Just give me a second. I think we could see it. This is the October monthly construction updates. I added in a slide to demonstrate I kind of just talk about things that you guys are seeing, the highlights, but I also want to give you some background of other projects that we're working on. As you can see, we have 4 projects in construction. 2 are being closed out and 2 are getting started out. So the rehab project and 6H office space, we're trying to close those out. And then we're just getting started with the dialysis and public health lab. And then in design, we are working on a series of projects that have been bond. These are all the bond funded projects. I won't read them all. You can see them, but we did complete earlier the adult urgent care and poison control. So I hope to report in the future that the rehab in 6H has also been completed. Moving on to the 3rd floor rehab service, we are still at the tail end of this project, and we're trying to get the last minute fire life safety work completed. That kind of hit us at the end. And then once this is done, we'll be moving the rehab from the basement up to the 3rd floor, and then that will make way for the public health lab to get started, as well as once we get occupancy, we could start in earnest with the dialysis project, which is adjacent to this area. I do want to note that there's a lot of good transition work that's happening with this project right now, and we did get a huge load of equipment last week that got assembled and is being installed. I want to introduce a new project to you. This is actually is just enabling work to support the dialysis demolition and IT infrastructure. What we are going to be doing is the area where you pick up your food at the cafeteria is called a servery, and we are going to be relocating that to a temporary servery. And as you see on the right, the pictures are an area that we're cleaning up and we're making it ready for the temporary servery. The idea is to use that during this period of construction. We plan to activate this in early December. And the plan is to not only facilitate the demolition for the dialysis work and do the work for the IT infrastructure where the permanent or the existing servery is, but to renovate that space and clean it up. And once we're done, we will combine these two areas, this new area that you see on the right and the existing area, for much larger and more efficient servery space. And then during this work, the alternative break site will remain available. So that's something new to report out. The sixth floor project, we're just like rehab, we're trying to work out the last minute fire alarm details to make this available. The mezzanine project is so close, so close. By the end of this month, that glass should be all installed, and we should be removing the barricades, and we'll have a nice display area there. I do want to note that once again, I'm going to remind you about the campus restrictions that we have in place, and that we are creating we have created the side entrance for off-hour staff by the building 25. As you can see, the card access was added. This is a notification of that change. This is the door that has been activated for off-hour access. And then we've been pretty successful with the seismic work that's happening on the first floor in rerouting the space around 1C. So when people want to get to the outpatient lobby area for pharmacy or 1M or dental, they would enter from the south lobby and have to divert through the 1C area into 1M, and the same way to leave, or they exit out the north entrance there. We continue to keep chillers running and working on auxiliary and repairing of the existing that continues, and we remain in a standby mode for wildfire smoke issues. The shuttle change took effect in September. This took the yellow route out. This is a repeat. We introduced this to you at last management forum. And then again, we still have some parking available at the San Bruno parking lot. The cheapest parking in San Francisco. And then that brings us to the UCSF Research Building. And I will pass the baton over to Ken Humphreys, who can tell us about the ongoings and the installation of the skin of the building.
Yeah, and I'll take over and try to share my screen. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to. Oh, there I go. All right. Terry, can you see my screen now?
It's starting to show up. There it is.
Beautiful. So happy October. This is the north side of the building. It will not look like this at the end of the day. The yellow that you see is waterproofing. Those panels went up super fast, and hopefully it'll quiet things down a little bit on the campus, having that exterior. All those panels were set with windows in place, so that was great, and we didn't lose any windows, no cracking. Everything went seamless. We're currently on the east side setting panels, and we actually were moving so fast, the prefab plant couldn't keep up, so we have to slow down a little bit. And so some days the crane won't be working. The terracotta installation will follow in a month or so. And when that happens, we're actually going to scaffold both the north and south side. So there will be a little bit of noise from the scaffold erection. These terracotta panels are big and heavy, and using the JLG lifts that you see at the bottom of the screen here just won't work. We'll use that for sealing the joints and everything else. We will start flying some equipment onto the roof, mechanical equipment showing up. And I wanted to share a couple of photos of the crane picking one of the panels. These panels are 30 feet tall and either 10 or 12 feet wide. And you can see the glazing in place. So it's pretty cool to watch them go up. And from the inside of the building, you can see it's just open framing on the back. So it's an exciting time for the project. We're really pushing to get this building waterproof before the end of the year. We're going to start putting the roof membrane down later this month. And we're having some material procurement issues. Sheet metal, stainless steel sheet metal is basically impossible to get right now. Some of our metal panel products outdoors up on the roof are going to be delayed a little bit. So you'll see some temporary protection in the form of shrink wrap tarps, things like that. Don't be alarmed. That won't be the final finish. It'll look nice. But yeah, that's how it's coming along. We're also making sure we're putting down AB rock along this north side. So we're not going to, during rain events, we're going to be protected and not have any dirt slough off onto the roadway, and trying to keep that site nice and clean for everyone. That's all I have for the UCSF project. Oh, one extra thing, other than, go Giants. We are now either fully vaccinated or in the process of vaccinating. And by the 1st of November, everybody on this job site will be vaccinated. There's no exceptions, no exemptions allowed. So when you see people on site, everybody on this site is fully vaccinated. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Ken. That concludes our construction update for October.
Ken, you had me at Go Giants. Okay.
Heck of a game last night.
Yeah, it was. So I have a question for Terry. Terry, could you describe again what the finished cafeteria is going to look like when you're finished with this part of it? You mentioned the servery areas. Could you again talk about kind of what that's going to look like when all that when it's all done, this phase of it is done?
Sure. This phase is meant to support the bond projects, the dialysis project, and the IT infrastructure effort that's happening. There are future efforts that will impact the dining room and have a greater impact to the area, but this is not that. This is the providing a temporary servery to support the work that has to happen overhead. So we're not working over food prep areas or food service areas. So this will help the construction get done quicker. So they're not putting up containments every night and bring them down every day and making the area available. So we're creating this temporary servery, which is just adjacent to the existing servery. And then once the work is done, we're going to do some renovation work on the existing servery, and then the plan is to open it up and have and combine the two spaces and provide a much larger and more efficient experience.
So I'm trying to picture in my head, there was that area that had the compost bin, the recycling bin. That area is going to become part of a new larger servery. Is that correct?
You got it, exactly.
Okay. 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 I hope I hope everyone watching gets that mental picture that I have in my head. Okay. Um, Susan, we don't have any other questions from our audience this morning. Would you like to close? We can close early if there are no more questions. Um,
Sure. I'm surprised there are no further questions, but it must be everybody's kind of, warming up after a longer weekend. Yeah, so, there's a lot. I love what Lisa said. This is a time of hope and uncertainty. In many ways, I think we've been in times of hope and uncertainty for quite a while. But it's really, especially because we have such a large percentage of the population vaccinated in San Francisco. I think to me, it feels more hopeful than it has been in previous times. And especially as we go into the winter time when last year we had our biggest surge of the pandemic so far at that point in time. So I like focusing on hope and opportunity. So I really appreciate everybody's joining me in that. Thank you for helping all of our team get through the uncertainty part of that, because I think we are going to be in an uncertain time for a while to come. And it takes a lot of fortitude and wherewithal to live in uncertainty for as long as we have. So I just want to express gratitude to everybody. Please let me know, please let the executive team know how we can best support you during this time. Enjoy the fall months, and we'll look forward to seeing you back in November time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.